title of the show is Impossible Worlds, and that comes from the title of my thesis. It's a theory by David Lewis, an American philosopher, and he looks at counterparts and parallel universes, and how if a parallel universe exists, it can exist as a whole, complete world. So I'm interested in possible worlds and parallel universes because I was born in Colombia and adopted and raised in Australia. So in particular, I look at the other children that were also from Colombia, raised in Australia, and how we could have been each other's siblings. And it's like a very tangible way to look at the parallel universes and counterparts, because they are sort of a physical living counterpart. So I have several works in the show spanning from about 2010 till now. The sort of centre work is a video I shot in the Amazon. I had a conversation with a young boy about the mythology around the pink river dolphins there, and I was interested in them because they're a way to explain away illegitimate births, which I found quite fascinating. And so that, looking into the folklore, was the starting point for my research into other folklores around the Amazon and in Colombia. So that work fed into the body of drawings in this, titled Silly Homeland, and they are all based on mythology and folklore that I've researched. And then also I have works, sort of intimate interactions with my family members. I'm looking at processes of relating and how families relate when they're not biologically related. And I'm interested, in anthropology as far as looking at kinship and processes of kinship and physical acts of kinship, and that comes through in my videos. I'm trying to capture them, but in a really forced way, but also in an intimate way with my family. And I'm interested in mythology and folklore as a way of sort of better understanding Latin American culture, and as almost an access to Latin America culture. I think the way the folklores say a lot about the area that they come from, or about the people who are telling them, and that's why I'm interested in the folklore from Colombia and mythology.
I think the work, as I was working on it, although it's quite intuitive, as basically it's unconscious, driven by the hand, and then went through with some fragment of memories, childhood memories, or at the same time reinventing the memories or the truths. But actually I realized after I've done the work to visit myself, it's more of an interplay of the yin and yang, which as the work was kind of like horizontally laying there, and the object is not quite being seen, but rather than just a very plain natural line there. What we see, or what the shadow revealed, is actually the cutout, which is the missing part, and revealed what is in the real shadows. And that is the moment I think the spontaneity and the freedom, or the confronted desires or the fear was revealed in the shadow. And that's the work how completed, to showing all this kind of in-harmonized themes, and especially today's social problems. That's regarded as maybe the big issues, like either wondering about the peace, the freedom, the war, or more personal, emotional issues about the fertility and basically how to achieve happiness. And the work is more about how to achieve the happiness through this interplay of the yin and yang. So as basically to say, the white shadows as a metaphor for death and decay, actually released in the real life, and from the shadow position and giving a promise, moving to the light and becomes life again. I guess what I was looking at the shadow also, it's quite invisible or untouchable, ungraspable, and I come to realize actually it is a true existence, because the shadow, as I looking at it, is more of one's inner world. It's unconsciousness. It's kind of like most of the time being suppressed or rejected by the public, and sometimes people even fear to confront their own shadow thoughts or the desires. So the things I intended to do is manifest the shadow as a metaphor to reveal what is hidden and to confront your own truth or the thought. I really kind of like this the whole exhibition title, The Impossible World, because that's give opportunity for the audience to participate in the exhibition. And as an artist, I only can initiate the beginning part to raise a question. But actually what happened is the work won't be complete till the audience participate. As they come into the space, they cast their own shadow onto it. And also it is important because the graphic I did was very abstract. So each person, each individual will perceive it differently based on their own experience. So they might see it completely different, and I think that that's a very important part, and it's for the work to be complete.
So the works are machine-stitched paper stretched over door and window frames. Wax is applied and then a concrete oxide wash is washed over the top. The prints are made with domestic objects from my kitchen or from my shed, things that I can find around the house. The form that I'm using echoes a kind of batik process that's called chap, which basically means stamp. So it's a stamping process rather than a drawing or painting process, which is the other way that batik processes work. And this is more of it's the cheaper end of batik printing usually. But I'm just trying to subvert the idea of batik being this kind of exotic other material and bring it into my own context. And I also quite like, because I'm trained as a printmaker, it's not always, you're not always in complete control of the process, depending on which printing process that you're using. And that's one of the things that I always found really intriguing about the process of printing, was what happens when it doesn't do what you want it to do, and can that be better than what you intended in the first place? In a sense, what I'm attracted to in pattern is quite basic and inexplicable, and something that comes from my childhood and my experience of pattern, a kind of fascination. But there's also a way that once I start working with it, it starts to, it's a meditative process to create a pattern, and then it starts to have a kind of an intellectual flow-on effect where I start thinking about, well, what does it mean when a pattern has flaws? What does it mean when a pattern isn't symmetrical or perfect? What does it mean if a pattern slowly degrades over time? And how does that reflect patterns as material culture or domestic objects or architectural? I'm trying not to say decoration, as a part of architectural spaces. So what happens, how does pattern reflect culture as it is? And so I think it's quite interesting when you have this repeated motif that is not always perfect, but can create a sense of symmetry and balance. And patterns usually, in their original form, have a coded context, and they mean something quite specific to certain groups of people. So they have, they're a language in a way, and language is the correlation between language and pattern I find really fascinating as well.